They still had that kind of drowsy PA announcer and all that
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
But I mean, Hollywood, they dropped all that Hollywood cool, and Magic had them going,
Yeah.
and it was quite a time,
Well, I was gonna
quite a
say,
time.
so Jerry West revealed in 1979 through the interview in the book that he didn't think Magic Johnson should be considered as the number one pick in the draft, which was stunning to me to hear. But in addition, the Bulls and the Lakers flipped a coin for the number one pick. So I guess in hindsight, how crazy is it to think that both of those fronts could have been the total opposite?
Oh, it is. I mean, it's like Pat Williams, who was the GM first he was the GM in Chicago. He was the Bulls GM. And then Pat went to Philly, where when Dr. J all through the 80s. And then, of course, Pat ended up in Orlando. And so he's a walking history book himself. And he said, it was absolutely crazy. And, you think about it, this is the craziest thing of all. The NBA had all of this success. Yeah, they bribed their way into the dream team. They bribed all the international basketball officials.
Yeah.
And they've admitted this to me. They bribed them, so they set up what was called the McDonald's Open to sort of be a little trial run for
Yep.
putting pro players in the Olympics. And they blew up the planet with the Dream Team. I mean, those games were terrible. But the planet ate it up, and that launched the brand. It had all the Celtics, Lakers. Here comes Michael. Basketball blew up. And what did David Stern do in 2001? He let Jerry Colangelo, as head of the rules committee, Colangelo, the most testosterone kind of guy among the owner group, would sit there and look at Stern in those league meetings. David Stern let him change all the rules in the game.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
That game that was played that made everybody crazy went away. If you had a magic wand and you could have the 96 Bulls play the 2015 Warriors, you'd need a freaking time machine to pull it off first. But even if you had a time machine, which rules would you play under? Would you play under the 96 rules or would you play under the 15 rules?
96.
Well, the Warriors would say, wait a minute, we did our thing under the... But, Colangelo was the owner in Philly. In Phoenix.
In Phoenix, yeah.
And he was in the process of building that 7 seconds or less team. See, he wanted the rules changed. He had seen enough. By 2001, Phil Jackson had not only won those 6 titles in Chicago, he'd won his first 2 in L.A.
Yep.
Right there in Colangelo's backyard. Colangelo had seen enough of that. So they shaved that timeline down. They eventually cut the reset clock. They changed the defensive rules. They really just started calling everything, except for the guys in the post. You couldn't touch a perimeter player, but you could beat a post player to death on the floor and wouldn't get a whistle. And so they remade the game. Now, it took a while, but the game has changed. And I think we're going to see it change back.
Yeah, because I think it eventually comes back, right? And, you talk about like the with the Lakers and how they acquired, Magic Johnson as well. Like, I think if we're talking hindsight, we keep talking hindsight about the game, like the Gail Goodrich trade, like really made the 80s basketball like relevant, right? I mean, the Lakers and Jazz agreed to send, what was it, the New Orleans first round pick from the 1979 draft to the Los Angeles Lakers for 1977, 1978, and then an additional second round pick. So
Yeah.
if that trade
The
didn't
league
happen,
was really tough on teams
yeah,
signing other teams' free agents back then. If you were in New Orleans, you signed a Lakers free agent, Larry O'Brien, who was the commissioner, was going to make you pay. They were going to hammer you. You were going to lose draft picks, and so you had an imbalance there. And of course, that eventually went away. They didn't make that quite as severe when teams signed free agents away from other teams. But, they got rid of post play. They didn't want it. They said it's an inefficient shot. And, some of it will go back. Some of it will stay as it is now. It's hard to say. But Magic, I don't think there'll ever be another player like Magic Johnson.
they won't.
I don't think, or another player like John Stockton. A lot of people forget Stockton had the no looks, and that dude was a locomotive too.
Great defender too. So I mean,
oh yeah, steals, all-time steals, all-time records. Just played all the time. Would never sit out.
right. And
I think he missed 22 games over a ungodly long career.
yeah, which is just unheard of, especially in today's game. But when I think of John Stockton, Roland, and when I think of Magic Johnson, like I think of work ethic and like their hardworking mentality, right? And I think like you talked about it in the book that Magic Johnson's dad, had tough labor, right? And
Yeah.
and at the same time, like Magic saw that and it opened up his eyes as endless hours throughout Magic's life that maybe I shouldn't be doing what my dad's doing. How truly important was Magic's dad's presence in his life?
Well, think about this. First, Magic idolized his dad. His dad was a man's man, and he'd been working in the grinding boot. He had an auto worker's job, really tough job, spot welding on cars, GM cars. And boom, he also had a trash hauling business on the side that he had his sons working on with him. But he worked 6, sometimes 7 days a week. He had a big family, had a lot of bills to pay, and he was determined to pay them. As hard as he worked, the Kansas City Kings, man, now they're in Sacramento, of course, but back in 78, they were in Kansas City. And their executive, Joe Axelson, wanted Magic Johnson. Magic and Dr. Charles Tucker went out there, and it was obvious that there was a lot of money to be had. Now, a lot back then was $1 million or $2 million. I mean, the money today is
Very
it's beyond ridiculous. If you went back to ancient Greece, they didn't pay the gods of Mount Olympus that much, but they pay them like they are the gods. I mean, there are countries that don't have the GNP of an NBA player, probably. But boom, they're paying all this money for Magic to turn pro, get his old man out of the grinding boot. His father won't have it. He said, "Man, I've been working my whole life. When I was a kid down in Mississippi, I'd pick cotton." He said, "I'm up here an auto worker now. I got my business," he says. And back then he worked a lot of time to make $20,000 a year. And he said, "I've been poor my whole life. I can be poor a little longer. I don't want you turning pro." And he told Dr. Charles Tucker, "Don't listen to that mess up there." And Irvin wanted to go, not because he wanted the money. He wanted to go play against pros.
Right.
But if you think about it, if Irvin had turned pro right then, if he hadn't listened to his father, there would have been no Larry Bird and Magic Johnson in the national championship game. The
Nope.
whole thing of basketball wouldn't have blown up in the public mind. And so Irvin Johnson Sr., Magic's old man, his quiet dedication, his desire to see his son win a national championship. And those things are hard to come by. You got to,
Very
back
hard.
in those days, it wasn't a
Yeah.
big tournament.
Absolutely.
You had to win the Big Ten to get in.
Yep.
But he wanted his son to win it. And because that game occurred, that game blew up basketball. Larry and Magic became the thing. And if Magic's old man hadn't insisted on him staying and work, who knows where basketball would have wound up. Magic wouldn't have been with the Lakers.
Nope. Maybe Hakeem?
No. You don't know how that stuff falls. You don't know, if the Bulls had won that coin flip,
Michael
Magic
Jordan
would have
would
gone
not be in Chicago.
No, none of this. I mean, the whole culture. When you think about the impact, now the NFL obviously has a huge impact, but pro basketball has this huge global impact on culture.
Massive impact. Yeah.
My Michael Jordan book is in 22 languages.
Wow.
Now, my Magic book's going to be in 8. There will be more. My Kobe book is in 12. That is how big American basketball players are to the global audience. Yeah. Now, there has not been a more put upon, more abused, more victimized, more smashed population than the black male in North America. I mean, we have a sample size that goes back 400 years.
A long time.
I was over in Japan with my son-in-law. He's a PhD from Harvard. He's over there on a research grant looking at samurai graveyards. He's down there on the coast, and this is back last February. He sends us pictures, this eerie samurai graveyard from like the 6th or 8th century or something. It's there in the mist. And it hit me like a punch. You think about this. The warrior culture is amazing the globe over.
Yes.
What has become the new replacement for on a global basis for the warrior culture? The American badass basketball player. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Magic Johnson. And they come from generations of people that, they had a long, hard road to any kind of opportunity. It's just brutal. They are now global heroes. Now, this is metaphorically. They're not running around with samurai swords, putting melons on the ground, But they, the way they compete. The NBA had no ratings. It had nothing. And then, boom, here comes these very, very different, great competitors